Hey everybody, what's up? It's Tipping the Scales. I'm your girl, Lachey Dawson.
Oh, I like that, fancy. And I'm your girl, Tania Rivers, aka T. Oh, wait a minute, Shay. Remember when we first started and I was all excited and I was like, T, money in the house? And I got hit up by all my friends like, no, stop.
And I'm T Money.
They're like, where did that come from? And whatever it did come from, please flush and get rid of immediately.
I do remember that. And then you were like, okay, I'm not T Money. I'm actually T. I don't know who that was, but I was really excited. Bye.
I mean, I was trying to, get out of this corporate HRT and show a little something, but
I will say, Tania Rivers, a lot of people on my side of our audience, like, people who come through and are tippers from my side, they absolutely love you. Like, I get so many positive, excited messages about you and your transparency and just like, it's the craziest thing. And I'm just always like, yeah, I know. Like, that's why we chose each other. Like, that's why this is so good.
Yeah. One, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. But the same thing on my side. My people love you. They're like, man, where did you find her? She's such a good mix. You guys compliment each other so well. And I'm like, that's my little sister. So same. I'm glad that we found each other.
Yeah, me too.
Aww, that's so cute. Yeah. So listen, for today's episode, a very important topic that I think not only we should try to inspire to be better in, but also just our role in general, not just in the workplace, but just in life, is think about it. How can you be a better ally to others? How does that resonate with you when you hear the word ally?
Man, I mean, ally means, and it depends on which way you're using it, but in generally, an ally is someone who's standing in the aisle with you, somebody who is ready to walk with you, listen to you, believe what you have to say first. That you don't need to convince them to do anything. If you need somebody there for you, you're like, look, I need you to look out for me. This may not be something that you understand, but I just need you here with me. And that person's just ready to go. That's what that means to me.
100% correct. Like your support person. And I think what's important too is when you think of an ally, that person does not have to look like you, doesn't have to be from the same background, doesn't have to be the same race, doesn't have to be the same gender, doesn't have to be the same anything.
Right.
It's just someone who is standing up for you, but also kind of giving you just some peace that you're not in this alone. And I'm someone who supports you. So I think that, when you think about that person, are you an ally to anyone?
Yeah. And I also think about is an ally someone that is different from you, looks different than you, is different gender than you? Because oftentimes when you need an ally, it's somebody to speak on your behalf or to support you that maybe has a contrasting view or maybe has or just an opposition, a different opinion than you. But they love you so much that they're willing to just stand and vouch for you and willing to put themselves in the forefront to just kind of share and be there in support of what you're doing and what you believe in.
Sure.
And I would say I'm an ally of children. I'm an ally of the youth. I'm an ally of
women.
The voiceless. Of the voiceless, honestly. Yeah. I'm a friend of the friendless. I purposely try and find people who feel isolated, who feel alone, who felt marginalized or do, because I'm not afraid to put myself in the line of fire for other people, especially if it makes their lives better, especially if, I just have a platform or I have something or whatever privilege that I have, I'm willing to use that to help other people when need. So I try to do that before it's asked of me. So sometimes I'm like, oh shoot, that's not, they don't need that, but I will always offer it. I will always go hard. And, if I'm not needed in that way, then I'm happy to step down too. But I'm pretty aggressive in that way of trying to be an ally to somebody. So
I love that. And I think to answer your question is you have different allies for different things, right? So I think that, yes, it is great to have allies that may look different from you, because you may need someone to stand up to be a different voice in a room. And sometimes it's that ally who is of whatever the persuasion is of that month or that agenda or that topic is helpful for that person to weigh in. So, I think that you can have many allies in different aspects of your life. But I do the fact that if you're kind of lead by example, and, I always like to, when I'm looking at a situation, I always like to look within myself first and say, all right, how am I showing up for other people? How can I be supportive to someone in my life that may need it? And how can I stand up and be different today than I was yesterday? Those are just things that I kind of filter through. And I can tell you, last week, I was just having such a tough time. And it was my ally at work that helped me out to get pushed through some tough things that I was dealing with. It was that silent voice that said, you got this, T, don't give up. And it was a person who was giving me some guidance that I needed at a very tough time. So that person that's an ally for you can really help when you may not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, when you may be in a dark place or in a room where that appears to be very dim, because when you're going through a tough time, it's hard to see the light, right? Like you're just in the situation and sometimes you can't see past that situation. But when you have a good ally in your life, that person can be the person with the vision, or the person that has on those goggles that helps you see when you can't see for yourself.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely, and that makes me think of, like, in the sports industry, I've had many allies who are men, and I appreciate that. And I need that. I needed that at the time continually because of the standard, right? And the standard in the sports industry that I'm in men's basketball, or just predominantly men are working this field. I constantly need people to, and it's sad that it has to happen, but to validate the things that I already know that I can do, or the things that I have experienced or help others, get through or experience in the space. But it's until a man steps up for me, who holds the respect of those other people, those gatekeepers. Sometimes I don't get it when I need it. I get it when that happens. And so shout out to all those men out there, who you are, who've stepped up for me, or who've, shared my names in rooms that I wasn't in. And I've definitely needed that. And that's a constant thing. And also my brothers have helped me as well and said, I trust her. She's the one who handles my business. So if you want to deal with her, or you want to deal with me in this space, you're going to have to go through her, and have given me the credibility to do a lot of the cool things that I've done in the industry. And so I know that the importance of allyship, and that's why I was saying in the beginning, just like sometimes an ally is more powerful when they don't look like you, or have the same experience as you. And even in regards to race, I listened to this one podcast, or I think it was a video, but it was with Glennon Doyle, and she had a guest on there, and she's like saying, I don't need an ally, I need an accomplice. And when it comes to race, I do need an accomplice. I do need to help someone to help, or someone to lean in and try and just break down a lot of the barriers, and to deconstruct, what has been constructed from just an evil lens. And so it depends too, right? Like allies, there's sometimes when you need allies, and there's sometimes when you need accomplices too.
Oh, I love that. And I love when you gave the example about working in sports, because it's, predominantly men in that work, like in that actual industry. It made me think about, remember we did a weigh-in on Roe versus Wade with all the drama, the kind of the aftermath that happened. And we talked the importance about, for us in terms of having the right to choose.
Yeah.
But it was very refreshing and inspiring when I went to LinkedIn. You talk about allies, just being able to see some of the men that stepped up and said, you know what, I may not experience this, I may not know what it is, but I stand alongside of the women who are losing their voice to choose. And it was just to see many of the men be able to step up to support us and to support people who are impacted. I think that just made me feel like, you know what, we're not alone.
Right.
No matter who you are, female, male, not binary, whatever it is that you choose to identify yourself. The fact of the matter is that we're all, we have to bond, like kind of be this one supportive force that stands up and holds each other's hand when we're facing difficult circumstances and challenges in our lives.
Yeah, exactly. And that even goes for sometimes in the sports industry, or, you know, in Roe versus Wade, or any of those type of situations where the gatekeepers are older, where the gatekeepers are up there in age. There's an age discrepancy between the people that are making the laws or making the rules and the ones who have to follow and abide by it. Sometimes even having allies in terms of the age gap between certain demographics of people is important too, right? Having older people, experienced people to vouch for younger people, because there is this misconception that younger people don't know what's best for them, or they don't know the rules, or they don't know the implications, when sometimes that's not the case. There are a lot of young people who are very mature or who are very experienced. And so sometimes they don't get the opportunities that they should because maybe of their age, right? And a person that holds this role or title should be, you know, this 17 years of experience and this age and married and all that. When I think what I start to see in the Gen Z space, working a lot with Gen Z, and I forget what this next the generation now that's coming after Gen Z is called, because I'm just now reading about it, but it's going to take sometimes for those people, even sometimes me, like sometimes I don't consider myself older, but I am experienced in the space, to like, you know, reach down and like help somebody come up. Right. And like put someone's name out there that maybe no one was thinking about because I've had my eye on them, or they've come to me and asked me questions and been curious. Sometimes it takes an older person to vouch for a younger person to get an opportunity. And I think that's another way we can continue to be allies too, is to constantly survey the circles and people that we interact with and see if we can give an opportunity to somebody who's deserving. So
yeah,
that's how I think about it too.
Oh yeah, I love that. And again, I think you said it well with giving others the opportunity when they deserve it, because plenty of people, they just need opportunities, right? They just need a chance. And oftentimes we get so hyper-focused on an agenda, or, you know, when I look at it from an HR perspective too, for me being in this space for over 25 years, especially when it comes to hiring, we are inclined, you know, like we know that some of the best talent may be from referrals, right?
Yeah.
But oftentimes in organizations, especially with us working in sports, it's a combination of who you know and what you know. But who you know in sports weighs a lot more heavy sometimes than what you know, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all about relationships. But what about the people who need an opportunity who may not know someone, right? Like that's all about how could we stand up in a room for people who may not have a voice? And that's something that I try to be very intentional about. You know, even for me, like you gave the example of, you know, sometimes like the older version, you know, as you get kind of older in life, and the kind of disparities between the younger generation. Well, I think it kind of goes from both sides. So for me, when I'm in the room and I'm hearing certain things about maybe folks who may be in a role for a while, maybe been at an organization for some time and they're looking for different talent, like I'm in a room saying, wait a minute, don't forget about the institutional knowledge this person brings to the table. Don't forget about the years of experience, because sometimes, you know, just, you know, I'm glad I haven't dealt with this in my organization. We're very respectful of, you know, kind of being your most authentic selves. Like we pride ourselves to being an organization that's committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But at the end of the day, it's us kind of setting up this workforce where you can be your most authentic self. So it's something that we take pride in our organization, but not all organizations are like that. And sometimes the older workforce gets pushed out because they want this younger person to come in, because there's these preconceived notions about, because you're older, you're not, you know, equipped with technology, or you're not up in the know that this younger person is going to come in and make a difference. And I think, it's not about age. It's about what you bring to the table, your relevance, what you need at the time in terms of it's a project. So there's so many different thoughts to kind of go through my head. But I do think that, again, it's how do you stand up in a room for someone else who may not have a voice?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because the thought that came through my mind was like, in order to be an effective ally, you have to be brave. You have to be courageous. Brave. You have to be willing to sacrifice things. And that means that sometimes you have to be willing to accept the consequences with stepping up and being someone's ally.
Yeah.
And that's why not everybody knows how to be, because being comfortable is easy. And
Yes.
So taking those steps and being courageous and stepping out on a limb and doing that, you have to be courageous, because you don't know what the implications are. You don't know what the repercussions are. You have no idea. But that's why in allyship or being an ally, that has to be your intention, to improve, to innovate, to be a disruptor, meaning you're not afraid of any of that. You don't care about any of that. All I care about is impacting other people in a positive way. And if you're willing to do that, no matter what happens, it's always going to lead you to where you should be going and what you should be doing. So
I love that.
Anybody who's going to be an ally.
I love that you talked about this element of bravery, because I think sometimes we're afraid to step out on a limb for someone else, right? Like you are definitely more courageous for yourself, right? Like you're like, this is something that I need and I'm willing to do for me. Yeah. But when it comes to putting yourself out there for someone else, you may not be inclined to do so in terms of how that's going to impact you. So I think, in terms of being brave is being there to support the person when you know there's some level of risk for yourself. Yeah. And that may not be easy for other people, because some people may say, like, I'm not willing to put myself on the line, put my reputation on the line, put my job on the line for someone else. But I think know your audience, right? Like know who the person that, whatever this person is that you're supporting, like you should know that person well enough to know that you're making the right decision and that the risk, it's worth it based on that person, right? And
risk versus reward.
Right. And I think that's what's important, because when I'm like, I just recently was an ally for someone in a work setting, and it was just more so just providing clarity, because oftentimes perception is reality, and what you bring to the table, maybe you had such a brief interaction with someone, right? And then folks will take away, well, this person, they already came up with, like, in 30 seconds who they perceived you to be.
Yes.
Without getting to know who you truly are. Yeah. So because I was in a room and I knew that person, I said, wait a minute, that's just not true. That person is actually kind, very humble, is really good at their job. So I provided just more color based on what this perception was about this person. So sometimes it's just, again, being able to be that voice of reason, being able to provide more color that may help someone that goes a very long way in someone's life, for sure.
Man, I consistently do that with athletes. Like athletes in my life. Like,
yes. When you said
I do not play, like, because, well, I guess particularly the demographic that I need to speak for, I need to constantly stick my neck out for are young Black men, because they're already starting with so many stereotypes against them. Like, so when I'm in rooms with people, decision makers and gatekeepers about their futures, it's crazy to me to hear the things that are assumed about a lot of these young people. And the reason why they assume it is because they don't know them. They only see the either things they post on social media or hear something that they feel like they've done their intel and they've asked enough people. And it's like, those people you asked had brief interactions with them. They didn't go into their homes. They don't talk to their parents consistently. So constantly I'm in rooms humanizing these young Black men.
Yeah.
Like humanizing, being like, stop right there.
Let me set the record straight.
You know what I'm saying? Like, put yourself in their shoes. Their mom, has X. They come from this type of family. They had to fight through this. This is their third school. This is like, there are reasons why people do things. And then it's constantly like, Oh yeah. And it's like, so I totally understand what you mean by that. Cause it's like, you constantly have to try, like, and it's also sometimes companies or people trying to make their bottom line don't have time to get to know people. They need, how is this person? Oh, I had this interaction. And boom, they moving on to the next one. That's why another reason why I have to also advocate and talk to the athletes too and say, this is what you're communicating non-verbally and you might not get another chance. You know, like, so you got to put out good energy. And then also, you know, brands or people working with them have to take a step back and say, hold on, do I know this person? And can I do a better job of collecting intel on this player? Or, you know, why did they do what they do? So I totally know what you mean by that because I'm constantly like, wow, it just bothers me. I'm like, you don't even know that kid. Like you're just saying that and you don't even know. And then your lens is not even culturally competent enough to understand. Yes. So it's like, just bothers me.
Well, I could tell I lit a little fire under you now, didn't I? But no, when I first talked about the word ally, I literally pictured you and the word ally with the players because you've been an ally of players since I met you, right? For athletes. And that's something who you've always been. And, you know, even if it's something someone you don't even know directly, like you're still an ally, you're like, hold on. Once you get to know the person yourself before passing judgment. Yeah. So I do know that that's something you really stand really hard and firm. And I just appreciate it just being a parent of an athlete because oftentimes people fall in love with this persona or who they believe they are based on freaking rat videos or
the narrative that the media has created that they didn't stamp.
Exactly. You know? Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because that narrative, that's something that just for me being in the cannabis space, that is important to me because there's so much that folks just doesn't know about cannabis that they make their own perceptions based on things that they see and that they heard opposed to their own experiences. So again,
or how the media portrays cannabis and who uses it and what it makes
and
them
why,
do. And only the negative things
opposed to the positive.
What they want the narrative to be.
Exactly. So,
and you work in the business so you can speak truth to some of those things that are very beneficial. So,
and help change the narrative by showing someone like me, like a middle-aged, in terms of I'm in my 40s, mid 40s. You know, I'm a mom, I'm a senior professional, and I use cannabis for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
You know, for insomnia, for anxiety, like things that I've been fighting with for over the years that people may not know about because again, you're so used to what you see opposed to what you know. And that's just so important for us, again, to kind of, even if you're not an ally to someone, it's kind of take a step back when you're getting to know a person or when you're finding out more information about someone. It's like, be a little bit more kind, assume positive intent. And the worst thing you can do is start running with your own perceptions about people opposed to getting to know who they are, right? And also not looking at one experience and saying it's the end all be all to that person. So maybe that person had let's say an unpleasant experience with someone or a conversation that didn't go well, or maybe that person was upset that day because of things in their personal life and maybe they didn't respond in the right way. But the worst thing that we can do is kind of put that person in a box and say, oh, that person is negative, rude, blah, 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 based on that one experience. Because you never know what people are dealing with. Like this game called life, people, it's tough.
Yeah.
It brings about a lot of ups and downs. It brings about a lot of uncertainty. And we're all dealing with real shit in our lives. And there's going to be times where we're not our best. And maybe who we come across may not be who we truly are. But don't hold someone to the flame on being that certain way because of interaction and one negative, experience or an experience that you may heard from someone else. Like, get to know people are based on your experiences, and it certainly needs to be more than one time.
Yes. No, and that's why I go so hard too, because it's like a lot of the judgment are from people who don't understand the world that this demographic is coming from, right?
Yeah.
So it could be white, black, Hispanic, It could be Asian, Indian, right? Like, so if we all have those lenses, male, female, non-binary, binary, all of these, like when you're judging people, you have to understand it's from your lens and your perspective.
Yes.
So that's why you have to be intentional about what you're doing, how you live your life, what you're saying, so that you can understand, you can listen with an understanding ear. Like, let me just listen to understand. You may not agree, but you need to understand where people are coming from. And even working with athletes, like these are children. 18 and under, you cannot hold them to the flame doing something when they're young. They need to be able to evolve, to grow, to develop, to make mistakes.
Because we do.
To explore, right?
Yes.
And even in your 20s, all the way up until you're 30, honestly, you really don't understand all the things that you do to implicate your future, right? It's not until you turn 30 until you actually start taking your life super serious. Now, there are some younger people, younger than 30, that are like, I'm ready, I know what I want to do. And there's that. But there's lots of mistakes and lots of learning things that need to be done. So there's all of these, like, we're all looking at the world from our lens. Some people are immigrants and have a different perspective and a different approach to life.
Different experiences.
People, right? Some people are born rich and wealthy and privileged. And so you have to do when you come from those circumstances, you have to do a better job of listening, understanding, like you have to do. And that's the biggest thing about being an ally is like, let me listen, let me research, let me ask questions, let me be extremely curious first so I can use a bit of the things that I've been blessed with to give it to someone else to help make their life, their quality of life better so that you can be better. Because if you're making other people's lives better, that's less things you have to worry about.
Yes.
So it's like we come from these different lenses that we all need to stop and say, this is how I was raised. This is how I was brought up. This is the community that I was raised in. This is where I feel like I should belong. This is the body I feel like I'm in. And I have to integrate with the world. And I have to understand where those people are coming from too in order to find my own pocket of peace in this world or to separate myself because that's not what I'm into or whatever the case may be. So it's like we just have to do a better job of like stop, listen before we judge, and then listen to understand. Yeah. And then we can move accordingly.
Yeah. I agree with you, Shay, especially the piece of being better listeners, because I think that that's something that we can all work on. Is oftentimes we're so used to wanting to get our point across, wanting to really kind of share whatever it is that's on our mind, but we don't do a good enough job of being an active listener to someone. So I do think that's something we can do better. Another thing that I think we can do better is no judgment zone. Like we are so used to judging others, being judged, that it's getting out of hand how we judge people often.
Good point. It's getting out of hand.
Yes. Like
the way
stop
we judge
judging
and condemn people in society these days. It's crazy.
All the time. And I think that just has to stop. Like stop making these judgments based on these just so many different factors. It could be based on where someone comes from. It could be based on who they are, what status they are, that you believe is status in life, how much money they make, who they know. Like we make so many judgments for the wrong reasons. Yeah. And that has to stop. Like all of us, have made mistakes in life that we looked at things and say, you know what, if I had a second chance, I would do that all over again. And you would do it very much differently than what you did. And I think you brought this up earlier, Shay, but I think it's important to kind of say this one more time, is that we all of us evolve over time, right? So who I am at 45 was totally different than who the Tania was at 25, like vast difference in terms of who I am. So again, it's like, stop judging people, because if you are, just, think about it for yourself, that if someone constantly judged you for everything that you did, how would that feel? So again, it's about how can we assume positive intent? How can we listen to people? How can we get to know people for who they are, opposed to kind of making those judgments and have these perceptions about people when you really don't know the full story? It's like reading one page of the book and like, oh, that book is terrible. I don't like that book. That book is not going to be good. It's like, you're read one page. Like, keep reading.
Yeah.
Get to know the story a little bit more. You know?
And it's, definitely. Like, it's crazy. Like, when I even think about like the Ime Udoka situation, like when I heard about it, you know, everybody's going frantic, and I'm thinking the why. Like, you guys are hurt. Yes, like
the why.
You're going through something. Like, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking you're both married people.
Yeah.
You know, the way this was blasted in the media, you know, and what your family is saying, what your kids have to endure. I'm thinking about those things, right? Like, and then I was telling somebody like, oh, whoa, what she looked like when she cheated. It's like, it's not all about that. Sometimes cheating is not about that. Sometimes people are longing for something, or maybe it was too easy. Maybe, you know, people are flirting. Like, they spend a lot of time together. Like, there's so many reasons. And like, it's just crazy to me that the way that the media just jumped down and they blasted something with no context, without details.
The full story.
They left it open for the world to pick these people apart as if they're not human.
Based on experience, we don't know what they're going through. They heard. Yes.
Right. We don't know what they're going through in life.
Yes.
And we worked in the NBA many years. Like, this is not something that's news. Like, this is not something that's blasted out for everybody to pry on them. And so for me, it's like, now these people's names are out there and they don't even get a chance to speak for themselves and say what they're going through or what their thought process was. Because although infidelity is horrible, it's not a crime, and they're human, and there's a reason why you do things. And like, it just really pissed me off. And now that we have to judge these people and we don't know anything about them. We haven't heard their side of the story.
Yes.
And now all we know is they're being disciplined or it's being kept a secret, and it's all that. And it's like, they have to go on with their lives. And I just think it's just like, that hurts my feelings. And so who's going to step up for them? Yes. Regardless if they did something wrong, they're still human and they still deserve justice, or they still deserve to carry on. They still deserve to get jobs. They still deserve to move on. Like, who's going to be an ally for them? Who's going to speak up for them? You know, and then also who's going to speak up, you know, for the people who were wronged in this situation, who did nothing wrong. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just thinking about like all the humans involved and like how we just do things and we just blast things out. And in today's society, it's just crazy to me.
Well said, my little sis. And again, people, let's do better. Let's support one another, and let's be the best ally that we can be for someone to help maybe change the narrative of a negative picture that could be painted, right? So we thank you for just hanging in there with us and continue to support our pod. We do this work for you, and we just ask that you continue on this journey with us. We're not going anywhere but up, and we want you to be part of that process. So thank you for listening to or watching on YouTube, Tipping the Scales, wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate you.
And thanks for the birthday wishes.
Yay. Thank you. Have a good day. See ya.